Hello, my name is Claudia Lopez, and my WebQuest is about the unsung heroes of civil rights, and the title of my lesson is Silent Heroes of Civil Rights. My homepage is dedicated to the what. What am I going to be learning? And I decided to put what I felt was a catchy, an attention-catching title at the very front where it says The Civil Rights Movement Beyond Dr. King and Rosa Parks. And it explains to them that this WebQuest, they will be learning about unsung heroes of the 1950s and 60s. And there's a short video clip of one of the people we will be discussing, Bayard Rustin, depicting some of the speeches he gave and some of the monumental accomplishments he made towards civil rights in the 1950s and 60s. So this is geared for that students to understand, what am I going to be learning about, and catch their attention. So once we have talked to them about what they will be learning, we're going to be talking about why. Why are they going to be learning this, and why is this important? Here I explain that when people learn about civil rights, they mostly hear the staples of names, which are Dr. Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, as I mentioned, and thanks to the movies, some may have even heard of Malcolm X and Medgar Evers. Still, there are many other activists that dedicated their lives to civil rights, and they don't get the credit or the attention that they deserve in our nation's history books. And through this lesson, they're about to change that. And how are they about to change that? Here we go. They're going to change it with this task. There will be a museum built to honor 4 civil rights activists that have not received the historical credit they deserve. You will pick a name from the list of 15 unsung heroes of the civil rights era and present a persuasive argument for their induction into the museum. So right off the bat, I'm presenting my students with a problem. There are 15 unsung civil rights heroes, yet there's only 4 slots. Now my students need to come up with a solution um, to, to this problem. How can they best represent the hero that they are assigned and ensure that they are inducted into the Civil Rights Museum? Continuing with our how, they will be placed in groups of 3 historians, and their group will pick 3 names from our 15 possible options, and the teacher, first come, first serve, will take one of those names and assign it one person, one activist per group. First come, first serve. So here is the process. Once the students have been placed in their groups and they have identified their activist, the teacher will model a persuasive presentation for the students to watch, observe, and know what is going to be expected of their presentation when the time comes. The teacher is going to model um, the proper length of the presentation, the proper research that needs to be going into their presentation, and the persuasive aspect of it, of the presentation in order to get the candidate inducted into the museum. Now, obviously, this will be a candidate that's not on the list. They will have to do all of their research independently on their own. The presentation should be, my goal would be around 15 minutes, depending on the person that they're picking. 12 would be the minimum amount of time for the presentation, and I really would not want it to go past 16 minutes due to time constraints, because at the end of the lesson they will be presenting them in order to get their person voted on. So as you know, time needs to be of the essence. So after they see the teacher's presentation, they will meet with their groups, exchange information, and assign roles. I will be discussing what the roles entail, but they'll also be setting a timeline for their projects, and they're going to be figuring out what's going to work best for them. Hey, what's going to work best for us to exchange documentation? Is it going to be, email or Google Drive or a memory stick? I don't want to micromanage too much. I want them to do what they can with the tools that they have. At home, the research is going to start. I have given them resources for them to do academic research. They will be, um, more than able to go into Google or Wikipedia to get just some basic background knowledge on their candidate, but they're going to be expected to do some academic research behind that. So once they find out, hey, I heard this person attended Harvard University and was, later the dean of admissions, they're going to have to provide an academic resource to reference with that, and it cannot be Wikipedia. On day two, they will bring back to their group the research that they did and what they found and their ideas for their three main points for their section of the presentation. At that point, students can brainstorm and decide, hey, yeah, I think, the 3 points that you've made are fine. Or, their classmates can give them other input and say, hey, I don't think that is as important as this other point over here. Or, oh, by the way, look at what I found on your section, and maybe you might want to do some further research on that. At this point, on day two, they will also decide, hey, what do we want our PowerPoint to look like? We want it to be as smooth and as streamlined as possible, so it should look the same as far as the background and font throughout. The only thing that should be different is obviously the presenting voice and the content inside of it. Students should be reminded that their presentation needs to stay within the 3 to 4 minute range, because we still are going to have to allocate time for an introduction and a conclusion at the end of their individual presentations. On day three, they're going to come back with their screencast presentations for their classmates, since they had already brainstormed and decided what was going to go in there. On day three, we're expecting them to actually come in with a screencast presentation, and they're going to sit back and watch their presentations in the order that it will be in their final YouTube playlist, so they can see, hey, does this flow correctly? What, if anything, do we need to tweak? At this point, now that they have watched all three sections together, they can also brainstorm and say, all right, so what's going to be a persuasive introduction and closing statement? And at this point, the students can brainstorm and come up with those ideas themselves, and amongst themselves decide, so who's going to do the introduction, who's going to do the closing statements. On day four, the final drafts are already done, and their screencast videos are already uploaded into YouTube, and um, so are the introductory statements and the closing statements. On this day, they will have to submit the reference pages into the person that has the responsibility of compiling all of the references that the entire group got their information from, as that will be part of the presentation too. Um, the historian number three will compile a YouTube playlist at the end of the evening, and it should be ready to go in the morning for voting. The rest of the group members are advised that they should, stay on top of their candidate and review their accomplishments in their life, and be prepared for any questions that may be posed the next day, day 5, which is voting day. On day 5, the presentations will be will be shown to the class in a utilizing a YouTube playlist. And these presentations are obviously going to be lobbying for their candidates' induction into the museum and why they deserve it. Based on the presentations, the students will then vote on the induction of an activist. Obviously, they cannot vote for their candidate. And once the votes are made, each ballot will contain um, areas for a small reflection to be made on each candidate. So prior to the presentations beginning, the teacher will let them know, hey, make sure you take notes because you're going to have to do a small reflection on the students. Just 2 or 3 sentences. I didn't know this gentleman was a part of the Black Panthers. He gave out free lunches and medicine to people in low economic neighborhoods, things of that sort. They're also going to be writing a small reflection saying, I vote for this candidate because. So once all the ballots are in, the teacher will count them and announce the winner, hopefully at the end of class as time permits. But um, when the 4 winning activists are named, the groups know that they will be receiving 5 extra credit points on their presentations. Now, that's 5 extra credit points. Students who do not win obviously will not be penalized, so they still can shoot for an A. But those 5 extra points are, they never hurt anybody, and it's only a motivator for students to do the best that they can. And that is the process. And here are the roles that each person will be playing in the group. There's going to be 3 people per group, and it's going to be historian number 1. He or she is going to be in charge of part of the person's biography, which is the early life, the education, and the early influences of their candidate. That person will also be in charge of arranging meetings, both in class and out of class, sharing documents, staying on top if they decided to do, Google Docs, making sure that everybody has access, and keeping the project timeline, making sure that no people are falling behind and things of that sort. Historian number 2 will be in charge of um, researching what major efforts and or accomplishments towards civil rights legislation did their activists have, and or how did they better the lives of minorities in the 50s and 60s. That person will also be in charge of compiling the references page that I spoke of earlier and presenting them in the unit. Historian number 3, they will be in charge of depicting what role, if any, their activists had in the success of other better known activists, or how were their views in line or not in line with the view of those better known activists of his or her days, and their fate. Are they still alive? If so, what are they doing? And or how did they die if they're dead already, and under what circumstances? Historian number 3 will also be in charge of uh, assigning chronological timelines to ensure smooth video flow, and compiling the YouTube playlist. And assigning the chronological timeline will be, hey, okay, you will include his early life from birth until his college years. So any activism that he did during college, historian number 1 will cover. Activism after his college years will be historian number 2, with things of that sort. We don't want their actions to be overlapping each other, so it's crucial that somebody sets, hey, you're going to take it all the way up to here, I'll take it from here to here, and he or she will take it from there to there. These are small details that sound small but can be a big detractor in a presentation if not paid close attention to. And here is the criteria for each section. Now, these students will also be graded as individuals and as well as in their group efforts. So the teacher would be paying close attention if each person provided what was actually required of them. And it's clearly stated here. Each one will have an introduction within the actual section, not just the one for the entire um, presentation. They'll provide 3 points, three strong, facts about their candidates and the supporting evidence. They'll also have a closing statement. Now, again, this is a 3 to 4 minute presentation, so I don't expect them to get in the nitty gritty of it, but I do expect that the points that they brought up are relevant, are important. I don't want to, hear that this person was an avid juggler. That has nothing to do with civil rights. Um, it also gives them, small tips to say, wrapping up their section and restating with emphasis, really gives their their presentation that persuasiveness that it needs, and it gives them a tip to create an outline with their main points in their section before they actually do it, because once they translate it into a verbal presentation, it's going to make all the difference. And see, here are some of the resources that I provided for my students. There's a YouTube video on how to make YouTube playlists. There's also a PowerPoint for beginners. If they need it at this point, this is, as I will mention in the teacher's page, a lesson geared towards 11th graders, so they should be familiar with PowerPoint presentations. But if they're not, there's going to be a tutorial video on that. Um, Now, I'm using Snagit for my screencast, so I provided Snagit tutorials if they choose to use it. If they have something else they rather use, that's fine. And then here are the links to the Library of Congress and National Archives if they choose to use those for their research. Here is the rubric for their grading. They will be graded on historical accuracy, understanding of topic. Again, are they going on left base, giving me information that is not geared towards their accomplishments as civil rights activism. Use of facts. Again, their facts need to be backed up with academic research, the use of encyclopedias if they want, the use of .gov websites or .edus. And their presentations, did their presentation stay within the guidelines of the time? Did it have smooth transitions? Was it persuasive? Did each video have a clear theme? And did they they look appropriately? Did it give the factual information that we needed? Was it engaging? Was it persuasive? And their individual, they will be graded individually also. So I'm expecting, all of the elements that I outlined in the roles to be in there. um, I'm looking for their resources to be cited, and I'm looking for the reflections on the voting ballots, because although I do want them personally invested into their candidate, I also want them learning about all the other candidates. And here is the conclusion that I made. It just tells the students, great job. And this is what you learned. This is what you just were a part of. I speak about, you know, they were now, more personally invested into this historic figure, so they're more likely to remember them in the future and speak about them in the future and fix a real world problem, which is the omission of these historic figures in our nation's history books. They also learned about research, and they also learned how to provide valuable information into a collaborative goal. And in meeting and brainstorming and helping each other to provide clarity and swapping ideas, all of those are valuable skills that they will need in higher education and in the job market. And these are just some of the credits for the websites that I received, some of the things that I use in the pictures. And here is the teacher's page. I'm citing the California Content Standards, examine the roles of civil rights advocates. And I'm saying that it's an 11th grade lesson because that is the content standard. And the length is going to be 5 days. The participation, they will all be working in their assigned groups to combine the video presentations and the resources that they will need. And the sitemap is just that. They can go back and forth. Well, I hope you enjoyed my webcast on my lesson, and my WebQuest hopefully is insightful and will help students learn valuable tools and historic information. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.